Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram. Om 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 Shri Ram
Ram Jai Jai Ram Om Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram Om
Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram Om Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram Om
Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram Om Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram Om
Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram Om Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram Om
Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram Om Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram Om
Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram Om Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram Om
Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram Om
Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram Om
Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram Om
Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram Om
Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram Om
Ram Jai Ram Jai Ram Om
Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram. Om Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram. Om Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram. Om Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram. Om Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram. Om Shri
Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram. Hari Om to everybody. Yesterday, Papa made us to intensely dwell on the solo director, solo actor, solo producer. It may be an intellectual exercise for all of us, because at the moment our sense of individuality is so powerful that, as somebody has pointed out, we don't want to now put ourselves in the form of an actor. We are ourselves the director. No? We decide. So by going through the words of the solo director, solo producer, solo actor, we try with the help of reflection, with the help of going through the biographical sketch of those who have scaled the heights, their inspiring words. In our case, we are always guided by that word: behold divinity in every aspect of this world Leela. Verily, He is at play in all beings and creatures. If we keep on thinking about it, dwelling upon it, reflecting upon it, whenever we have to deal with men and matters, whenever there are trying moments, we may react in the usual way we have been so far doing it, but in the shortest possible time there will be a rethinking. Slowly, that is how it sets in. He willed it. Automatically we will start feeling it. He willed it. We don't know the reason. Then we try to recollect all these things. So it is, one thing is very clear to us, He is there as the life force inside us, but He is not making us aware of its presence. Simple thing. We all know that. Nobody need to come and tell us this. He is there in the form of life force, He is there in the form of consciousness, He is there in the form of awareness or intelligence. He is Satchit Anand. We breathe because of Him, we think because of Him, we see because of Him. Because the moment the life goes away from this body, we become dead. We have seen dead bodies also. So that much nobody need tell us. So He is there as the life force. Jivanam sarva bhuteshu. I am there in the form of life force in every jiva. But I am not aware. That mystery at least we recognize. Now those who have scaled the heights, they are conscious of this purpose. That is called the solo director, solo actor, solo producer. We are also aware, but we are not constantly aware. For all practical purposes, our thought becomes vibrant, active. It takes away, it assumes the role of doership, enjoyership, sufferership. With the result, the existence of this support, the substratum is forgotten, unknowingly forgotten. So, it is there, not that we don't know, but we know. But at the same time, we don't know. We know when we are in a passive mood, in a reflective mood. He is there. But for Him, I will not be there. But the moment the activity comes, the moment the thought becomes active, his presence is sidelined. When he say he is the, because of him, he is the director. That's why it's called director and producer, and we are the actors. Not only that it comes from the origin, source, producer, but it also directed by him every moment of our existence. This is the truth which we are not aware. So by sadhana we are trying to become aware. Now it is becoming more and more clear what is our sadhana. Our sadhana is to hand ourselves over completely to the real owner. At the moment we have assumed the ownership, he has permitted us to use the assumption, and then at a time comes when he makes us to think about it, and then he makes us to make efforts towards it, and we have seen in the life of Mahatmas, ultimately he gives this, he makes us aware of it. So all these thoughts came because of that particular word. Behold divinity in every aspect of this world Leela. Verily it is he at play in all beings and creatures. So the sense of individuality, the absence of other, the sense of individuality, we won't say it is not there. It becomes totally subservient to that power. Again, if we keep on thinking about it, we may be able to dig out many things. Another friend has read, then how does Dharma come into the picture? Dharma comes so long as we have the sense of individuality. That is why in the Bhagavad Gita he says, Sarvadharman Parityajya. When we realize that it is he who is behind everything, then the question of Dharma does not come. So that Dharma is a code of conduct given to us by him till we maintain this sense of individuality. Otherwise, we will go off the track. It becomes fully self-centered. In order that it doesn't become fully self-centered and it becomes slowly God-centered, Dharma is necessary. Think about it. It is a spiritual law, it is a physical law and spiritual law. If we don't adhere to that, we become totally self-centered and become miserable. Dharma towards parents, Dharma towards our children, Dharma towards wives, Dharma towards husband, Dharma towards the employer, Dharma towards the employee. Like that, and everywhere it comes. Duty. Relating ourselves properly with the others is called Dharma. Otherwise we become brute. Jungle law, they say, impulsively we will react. That should be there. But Dharma loses its relevance when we completely hand ourselves over to him. Because God has got different purpose. Now take the instance of Mataji. Mataji had 2 children, small children. A time when the care of a mother is needed. We don't know how far we are right, but we were told that even Mataji's Purashram people or even children, they mistook. They couldn't appreciate why Mataji took the drastic step of leaving everything from Dharwad and dedicating herself completely to spiritual life. But she did not abandon them. If we look closely, what was she said at the time of leaving? She asked the children to accompany her. She said, whatever I get, I will be shared to you. She did not leave them, abandon them. But children preferred to stay with their uncle to continue their education. Of course, somebody can interpret that. But in her case, the ultimate instruction comes from within. Her surrender has become complete, otherwise how can she come? A lady of 25 years old, leaving everything to come with nothing to fall back upon, and travel by steamboat up to Mangalore, from there by train to Kasaragod, from there on foot to the ashram, alone. At that time, ladies were not exposed to walk, to go independently. So what was their motivating force? What was that gave her the strength? It was nothing but the will of God. So Dharma is needed. Dharma should not be belittled. For us it is needed. Until we hand ourselves over completely. Then the question is, Sarvadharman parityajya mam ekam sharanam prada aham tva sarvabhavebhyo mokshayishyami ma shudha. So that stage, Papa also did the same thing. People can easily say he abandoned his family. No, it's not like that. He made them to know his preferences in life for more than 2.5 years. He made them, he settled everything. He did not just run away when there was mounting liabilities. God saw to it that everything was clear. God saw to it that everything is made provision for them. He made them aware of his preferences, not his life. So it was not, simply walking out. And in that letter, one letter to his wife, another letter to his friend, that completely, discharged all his dharma. Then he took. Because here, the priority got shifted. Preference got for a better, higher life came up in his mind because God willed it. So we have to do a lot of thinking, then we will find. The reference book is the biographical sketch of our masters. Take the instance of Gandhiji, He was a good practitioner, earning a lot of money in South Africa. Good barrister. Just to leave everything and then plunge into activities which are not at all commercial, where it will not give him any earning. It is God's call. He was able to hear that. Initially, Baba was unable to understand. Again, then Baba also was able to later on realize. So we go through each and every thing, then it becomes very clear. So where is the Lakshman Rekha of Dharma? It doesn't mean none of us can immediately jump into it. unless this, only that person will know, nobody else will know whether the mind has reached that stage to take the final leap. Totally relying on him and him and him only. For them, this dharma does not become a hurdle for them. Yes, the question role of a director instead of actor. So every time we have to keep on thinking about it. Another devotee has written, it seems Ram has already chosen Ramdas as his own being. The moment here in this chapter we will find that at times, some wavering comes. But immediately Ram gives him, though he puts him on test. If suppose there is some disturbance, immediately he makes him aware. Of course, he is the chosen instrument, no doubt about it. Papa was already a highly realized soul, otherwise how could he know the tests being put to him and pass them to? Yes. He has raised himself to a higher level, where he was trying, to make it a constant reality. We take it that he had experiences in the higher realms. He had almost submitted himself totally at the feet of Ram. But still that constancy he wanted. So we take it that all the rest of the period, which we call it a sadhana period or whatever you call it, it is only to get himself stabilized in the constant remembrance. Because when we go through, we find that at times there is some disturbance at the surface level. But in the shortest possible time that goes. Then as time goes on, as experiences keep on piling up, it gets concretized. Okay, now coming back to today's topic. Why are we taking so much burden on ourselves? Yeah, we need not. The burden is on us because we have removed him from the scene. We attribute the reason for our disturbance on some external factor, either an individual or a situation or an object. We don't bring in the God element. So the purpose of now motivating us to go intently through in quest of God with this perspective is to change our attitude towards men and matters. We take it like that. We have superficial faith in God. We believe in the words of our masters, but still it has not become a reality in our life. So many things are there which are becoming conducive for us to accept it, but still we have not accepted as His will at all times. So the burden is, we feel the burden on ourselves. Especially physical burden we will immediately feel. And at times financial burden. At times, the action or reaction of somebody else, that we carry it now on ourselves. The mental burden, the intellectual burden. On a lighter vein, we all know that we all share this, that when we travel in the train, we don't have to carry the luggage on our head. Whether we carry it on our head or not, the train will carry. Nice to hear, convincing, rational, logical. But that will all come only when we know that the engine is carrying us. We are only telling this for others. But when it comes to us, we still think that we are the engine. So the engine has to carry all the burden. So it's a question of intellectual knowledge and then the practical application of the practical knowledge into our life. So we will definitely feel the burden, and probably the feeling of burden is also willed by him so that we will cry for his help. Ultimately, when he makes us to feel that it is not bearable at all, then we plead. That's what Papa did in the first chapter. Where is rest? Where is peace? Until he heard, "Trust me." And when he trusted, the burden was off his head. So coming back to today's text, this chapter is a little bigger than the previous ones, and a lot of dimensions we will try today, tomorrow. We will first read out. In due course, Tirupapurur was reached. So after the boys made some thoughtless comments, they became very friendly. They checked up with Papa whether he had taken any meal. Then he said no, that was a reminder to him. So immediately he said fruits. So they did not have those fruits, so they handed over the money to the Sadhu Ram who was accompanying. The Sadhu Ram brought some fruits, and then the train reached this place called Tirupapurur, and both of them got down on a veranda. So in due course, Tirupapurur was reached, and Ramdas was taken by the Sadhu Ram to the house of an old relation of his, where on the veranda the night was spent. Next morning, the Sadhu Ram advised him to go for alms to a few houses pointed out by him. The Sadhu said, "Look here, Maharaj," said the kind-hearted Sadhu, "money is wanted for your plantains and milk. Ordinary food can be easily procured, but for your food, money is needed." He conducted Ramdas to a street, both sides of which were studded with houses owned by vakils. "Go from house to house. They might give you something. I shall wait for you at the other corner," suggested the Sadhu Ram. Ramdas, who was always at the bidding of his guide, did as directed. Begging at the door of about half a dozen houses, he got a handful of copper and other coins, which were all handed over to the Sadhu Ram, who on counting found them to be about 10 annas. "Your Ram is all really kind," remarked the Sadhu Ram, smiling. "This sum will do for 2 days." In the course of the day, there was a talk about Pondicherry, which Ramdas came to know lay only at a distance of about 20 miles from Tirupapurur, 32 kilometers. Nearly the distance from here to Kasaragod. A desire sprang up in his mind to visit the place for the darshan of Sri Aurobindo, the great Bengali saint. The wish was expressed to the Sadhu Ram, and he agreed to it at once. The following morning, early before sunrise, both started, of course, on foot and went towards Pondicherry. At about 2 p.m., so they must have started by 5 o'clock, say. 9 hours, 10 hours. Because even a brisk walk, 4 kilometers is a tough job in an hour. The outskirts of the Pondicherry was reached. The peculiarity here was that the entrance to the city was lined on both sides, a few yards from each other, by toddy shops. On entering the city, inquiries were made for the home or ashram in which Saint Aurobindo lived. After knocking about for some time, the gate of a palatial building was pointed out by a friend, wherein the sadhus were told the saint was residing. Entering, Ramdas inquired of two Bengalis, whom he met in one of the rooms at the entrance of the building, if Saint Sri Aurobindo could be seen. To this one of them replied, "Sir, sorry, since Sri Aurobindo is in retirement, he will not give audience to anybody for a year to come." Ramdas then begged the favour of a mere sight of the great man, which would satisfy him. Even this favour could not be granted. It was all Ram's wish. So he came out and explained the circumstances to the Sadhu Ram, who was waiting outside. While this was going on, a policeman was observed to be approaching the spot where the sadhus were standing. Coming up to them, the policeman said, "Friends, you are wanted at the police station. You have to follow me." At this, the Sadhu Ram was immensely frightened, and pulling Ramdas aside, whispered to him that most probably the policeman was taking him to be flogged. Ramdas suggested that they might accompany the policeman, leave the future in the hands of Ram. About half a mile's walk, and the police station was reached, and the sadhus found themselves standing in front of a tall man of middle age, with fierce looks and a well-curved and twisted moustache. He spoke something sternly which could not be grasped, for he must have done so in French. A reply in English was given by Ramdas, and the man, who seemed to be a police inspector, simply stared in return to indicate that he did not understand what was spoken. Then a talk in Tamil ensued between him and the Sadhu Ram. The import of what the police inspector said was that only 2 hours were allowed for the sadhus to clear out the city. At this, the Sadhu Ram remonstrated that after a walk of 20 miles at a stretch, the tired pilgrims required some rest, and they preferred to remain in the city for the night and leave the place next morning. This reply not only did not satisfy the inspector, but also appeared to have offended him a bit, for now he talked fast, his eyes glistening, his hands twisting his moustache furiously. Allowance of 2 hours were reduced to 1 hour, and if they did not obey the orders promptly, he warned that they would be made to pay for it. This time the words he spoke were freely spiced here and there with some finely selected epithets of abuse. Sadhu Ram at once pressed Ramdas to move away swiftly from the place for very life. He was a poor man, both frightened and annoyed at the sharp words of the inspector. A few yards off the station, and the Sadhu Ram commenced to pour quite a shower of abuse on the inspector. No amount of persuasion on the part of Ramdas for peace would stop the brisk play of his tongue. He was assured it was all Ram's wish, and so there was no reason to grumble. Still he continued to give vent to choice epithets of abuse. He seemed to be quite a master in that line. For about a mile, the Sadhu Ram's wrath did not cool down. Gradually he became silent, maybe due to exhaustion of his stock of vocabulary, or on account of empty stomach. Or it might have been all a trick of Ram. To test Ramdas, he would join him in the game set on foot by him. Ram alone knows, and he alone can judge. Retracing about 4 miles from the city of Pondicherry, Sadhuram selected the veranda of a shop which was shut for taking rest for the night. Early following morning, they started on their return journey to Tirupapuriyur, which place they reached at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Here it should be stated that the Sadhuram was looking after him so tenderly that he was a veritable foster mother to him. Again, it was all Ram's work, whose ways are at once loving and mysterious. Next day, the train carried both the sadhus to Tiruvannamalai. Here, the Sadhuram conducted him to the house of a goldsmith with whom he was acquainted. The goldsmith was a pious man. He pressed both the sadhus to remain in his house as guests. For some days, Ramdas occupied a closed veranda in his friend's house for his meditation and rest. In the mornings and evenings, he along with the Sadhuram would go to the huge temple of Mahadev. One day the kind Sadhuram took him for the darshan of a famous saint of the place named Sri Ramana Maharshi. His ashram was at the foot of the Tiruvannamalai mountains. It was a thatched shed. Both the visitors entered the ashram and meeting the saint fell prostrate at his holy feet. It was really a blessed place where the great man lived. He was young, but there was on his face a calmness, and in his large eyes a passionless look of tenderness, which cast a spell of peace and joy on all those who came to him. Ramdas was informed that the saint knew English, so he addressed him thus: Maharaj, here stands before thee a humble slave. Have pity on him. His only prayer to thee is to give him thy blessings. The Maharshi, turning his beautiful eyes towards Ramdas and looking intently for a few minutes into his eyes, as though he was pouring into Ramdas his blessings through his orbs, shook his head to say that he had blessed. A thrill of inexpressible joy coursed through the frame of Ramdas, his whole body quivering like a leaf in the breeze. O Ram, what a love is thine! Bidding farewell to the Mahatma, the Sadhuram and he returned to the goldsmith's residence.
Om Sri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram. 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 Om Sri Ram
Now, for the first time in his life, just imagine, Papa has been asked to go and seek alms. You just think, to go and stand before somebody's house. That means complete self-effacement is necessary for a person like Papa. Till 2-3 days before, as asked Vittal Rao, he has never gone and asked anything from anybody, begging. Just imagine. So, how Ram was taking him, test, first test. And he passed the test. How? Willingly he went. And the Sadhu Ram was also a noble person. Otherwise he would not have subjected Papa to go through. Because here, on those days when somebody goes for alms, what is given is more in the form of food articles. When Papa was having the woe, not to have the rice or something like that, and he was sticking on to milk and the fruits, for which money is needed. So he explained this to Papa also. And he showed them like a child, we can visualize. He conducted Ramdas to a street, both sides of which were studded with houses owned by wakils. Go from house to house. They might give you something. I shall wait for you at the other corner. So for the first time he has been asked to go for alms. Toughest test for the ego to seek alms from others. But the vow taken makes it smooth for him to do so cheerfully. Because he has taken, among the three vows, the last vow is that hereafter the body may be maintained, and fed upon the fruit procured by bhiksha or on what was offered as alms. Either bhiksha or on alms. So true to the sankalpa he made at the time of initiating himself into the order of sannyas, he readily agreed. He passed the test. Sadhu explained the reason for asking him to do. Ramdas wanted to make it clear. Ram wanted to make it clear that the Sadhu asked Ramdas to do so only because of the Ramdas's insistence on fruits for which cash is needed. Okay. Now again, first time when he received the 2 paise as the bhiksha, in the Srirangam, he expressed his heart was full of, his heart leaped with joy at the sight of these tiny coins. Okay, now, he did not even bother to count. He just handed it over to the Sadhu. He was asked to do something, he carried out. That's all. Just imagine. Neither getting elated nor getting demoted. Just hand over. And then, what the Sadhu Ram said, your Ram is really kind. The sum will do for 2 days. Sadhu Ram was also a noble person, Contentment is there. He was supremely happy to acknowledge that Ram has been extremely kind to provide for 2 days with that. Total detachment on money received by handing it over to the Sadhu. Sadhu's honesty and contentment comes out in his expression. We are seeing the test, First test was when he was asked to go on alms, willingly he goes. Second test, any attachment towards the alms, he did not boast, oh today I got so much. Did he say that? No. As if nothing had happened, he just handed it over. When he made that comment, third test, there was no reply. And then, suddenly, this is another point. In one's spiritual journey, darshan of Mahatmas, satsang with Mahatmas, going through their life and teachings, it will all help us a lot. Especially when so many tests are being given to us. We should have the necessary strength and courage and confidence. For this, the satsang helps a lot. So the moment he heard that Sri Aurobindo was a great saint, he was in Pondicherry, which is lying about 20 kilometers. Suddenly a desire comes. With nothing to fall back upon, they have to walk on foot. So when the desire to have the darshan of Mahatma, walking a distance of 32 kilometers was not at all a problem. And without food, they must have done it with 8 to 9 hours or 9 to 10 hours. Just imagine. And when they reached, test again, the severest test. You go all the way walking without food, on road, on foot. And the moment you go there, you find he is there, but you cannot see him. If he has gone out, it's a different thing. He is on retirement. For 1 year he has taken that vow. As spiritual aspirants, we get some clues, that even great Mahatmas take to such severest vows. Probably to intensely go further and further and further. We cannot say the reason. At that time you find, immediately, normally, Papa used to submit. But here, he asked, then begged the favor of a mere sight of the great man, which would satisfy him. Even this favor could not be granted. Then he knew it was all Ram's Vishnu. So at times, straight away accepting, he has been accepting everything straight away, So this gives us a feeling, This is the purpose for which Ram took him, to make him constantly submit to the will of God. So when we look at ourselves, we should also know he may give us some moods where we may accept, but he may also give us some. Immediately our intellect will come. We have come all the way, for 32 kilometers we have walked. At least you permit us to see him. So he came out, explained the circumstances. He tried. Twice he tried. Then when it failed, he came and explained. And then what happened? And the second one was the severest test. And he passed. The policeman asking him, even Papa has given us a word picture of the police inspector, so beautifully. Even we feel irritated the moment we see the word picture. When he is, twisting his moustache and ferociously looking, and not at all recognizing that they are sadhus, not at all recognizing that they have done the walking all the 32 kilometers, and he did not check up whether they had their food. All these things come to our mind. And then what happened? They were asked to quit. Allowance for 2 hours were reduced to 1 hour. And if they did not obey the orders promptly, he warned that they would be made to pay for it. Sadhuram at once pressed Ramdas to move away swiftly from the place for very life. He was both frightened and annoyed at the sharp words. Then after that, Papa was, we take it Papa was a mute spectator. Because the dialogue was between the Sadhuram and the police inspector in Tamil. Because Papa did not know Tamil and the other man did not know English. So Papa was a mute spectator for the whole scene. And then when the Sadhuram started showering all abuses, grumblings, complaints, Papa told him it was all Ram's wish and there was no ground for grumble. But still he continued. And then one more word Papa has added here. Papa could understand that it could also be one of the tricks Ram played. It could be a trick of Ram to test Ramdas whether he would also join. Whether seeing the finger of Ram in this inspector or whether they seeing only the inspector. The Sadhu Ram saw only the inspector, so he couldn't accept it. He couldn't reconcile to it. But Papa had the time to think about it because he was not talking to them. Initially he was talking and they could not understand. So the Sadhuram was talking to him in Tamil. So the time was there for Papa. Luckily he passed the test. So he says it could be a trick. It might have been all a trick of Ram to test Ramdas if he would join him in the game set on foot by him. Ram alone knows and he alone can judge. So the lesson for us is how careful we should be. Na? Our intellect will come and tell us all its arguments. It will make us to take judgments on others, on situations, on objects. So this episode, definitely if we go deeper and deeper and deeper into it, it will serve us whenever such tests are given. It might help us in pulling us up. It could be a trick, it could be a play, it could be a masterly test. Because why is a masterly? Because the intellect can all, intellect is justified in bringing about all its argument from the vyavaharic level. We cannot blame unless and until we bring the spiritual dimension, the God dimension. Otherwise we cannot. Even today we cannot agree with the inspector. We cannot agree with the inhuman behavior of the inspector. Because we see him as an inspector. When we see him as an inspector, we are justified in forming our own opinion. But when we see him as Ram, come to it, some comments are there in the chat. So when we look at him as an inspector, we are fully justified with whatever judgment we have on him. But the moment we bring in the God dimension, then we realize that, that is the severest test. Apparently the intellect can have all its. This is very important because we are dealing with everyday men and matters. Apparently we will be right, but we are not right. Because God is testing us through that. That is the truth. That we should become aware. We used to say, how can you ask do that? How can you do so? There is no how, The why and whereof is not there. That is the stage we have to reach, we at least know now. Whenever we point out the why and whereof, immediately, we should be, hey, who are you to decide the why and whereof? The programmer, he has decided it. It should be like this. We should lose. We should get insulted. We should be deprived of. Now all those things will be there. So don't allow your puny intellect to sit in judgment. It's a very important point in this episode. And then next day morning again, early morning they started. Back to the Republic, they were again 32 kilometers journey, just imagine. No mention about food anywhere. And with all that, Papa doesn't forget to say the goodness. Here it should be stated that the Sadhuram was looking after him tenderly, that he was veritable foster mother to him. Again, it was all Ram's work, whose ways are at once loving and mysterious. So next day they left for Tirunelveli. Here they stayed somewhere, and Papa stayed there for some days, and where again the word meditation comes. A closed veranda for some days, Ramdas occupied a closed veranda in his friend's house for his meditation and rest. Constantly reflecting, constantly reflecting. Otherwise this cannot happen. Constant reflection leads to constant remembrance. Constant remembrance enables us to accept everything as God's will. This is the lesson Papa teaches us when he makes the word meditation. In every chapter we find this meditation comes. We have not given unknowingly we have not given any importance for this. What was the secret of this poise? This poised stand of Papa. The secret was that he was constantly meditating on God, reflecting on God. even if it is slightly broken here and there. Whenever he was doing meditation, he must have been doing it intensely, so that the impact remains even in the non-meditation time. And then he would go to the Mahadev temple, and then finally, God arranges for him to have the darshan of Ramana Bhagavan. Another unique saint who also did not follow any formal traditions. At a very tender age, he could hear the call, took the leap, left his place and reached Tiruvannamalai and sat. Somewhere, we remember to have read that the entire sadhana was over before he came and sat. People think that we did sadhana. It was not like that. It was only reveling. That is why somebody, the other day we were reading Sheshadri Swamigal's. So it was Sheshadri Swamigal who used to go there and attend to the basic things, because Bhagavan was unaware of even the needs, food, feeding and cleaning, everything. With just a loin cloth he sat there. This is unique. Not only that he did not undergo anything that is traditional, but at the same time he went to a temple only, but the realization, the sense of individuality had completely become subservient to that power. So for all apparent this thing, he was maintaining a sense of individuality. He was well established in that.
You can say somebody, he is not the body. I am not the body. He experienced that. I am very body.
So all happened because that is how he saw the death of somebody. That was the only instrumental cause, if you have to say instrumental cause. Then what happens to the body? What is called death? A little bit of reflection started coming. It became deep and deep and deep, and finally the core was touched. The spark came out. Then he couldn't be there, he was drawn. And he sat there. For all practical purposes, we can say he was positively indifferent to the whole world. That is why he was not even replying. It is not indifferent, positively indifferent. He could see only the cosmic power, cosmic truth dwelling in everybody. So whom to talk to whom? Can somebody take that turn? It's not necessary. We will read a few quotations of Bhagavan. There is nothing to realize. There is nothing new to gain. On the other hand, a man must lose his ignorance, that's all. See? How did he scale the height? He has put it in a simple word. There is nothing to realize. There is nothing new to gain. On the other hand, a man must lose his ignorance, that's all. You need not aspire or get any new state. Get rid of your present thought, that's all. How he could do that in such, This was the guiding, the reflection was going on like this. There is nothing to realize, there is nothing new to gain. On the other hand, a man must lose his ignorance, that's all. You need not aspire or get any new state. Get rid of your present thought, that is all. The self is eternal, cannot be born. Body appears and disappears. And your identity with it makes you speak of birth and death. Simple, no? Though it is profound, it is conveyed in a very simple way. The self is eternal and cannot be born. Body appears and disappears, and your identity with it makes you speak of birth and death. I am born on such a date. I will not say I will die on such a date. My death is sure. That much we know. Silent meditation in the mind is higher than silent meditation in the mind is higher than the best devotional praise or uttering of the sacred name loudly or softly. Silent meditation, which Papa was resorting to every now and then now, in the mind is higher than, not that it is very bad, is higher than the best devotional praise or uttering the sacred names loudly or softly. Make effort. Just as water is got by boring a well, so also you realize the self by investigation, exploring. Watch the mind. You must stand aloof from it. You are not the mind, and the self will remain forever. Silence is of four kinds. Silence of speech, silence of the eye, silence of the ear, and silence of the mind. Only the last is pure and is most important. Silence of speech, silence of the eye, silence of the ear, and silence of the mind. Only the last is pure silence and the most important. The mind turned inwards is the self. Turned outwards, it becomes the ego and all the world. The mind does not exist apart from the self. It has no independent existence. The self exists without the mind, never the mind without the self. We have time. We will take up some more of his quotations tomorrow. And what Papa has talked about Bhagavan Ramana, that also we will read in this context. So today, Ram has taken to the darshan of Bhagavan. Because later on he will say, when he went there, though Maharaj here stands before thee, a humble slave, have pity on him. His only prayer to thee is to give him thy blessings. So when we go to a Mahatma, we only ask for his grace, blessing, that's all. And Papa says, the Maharshi turning his beautiful eyes towards Ramdas, looking intently for a few minutes into his eyes, as though he was pouring into Ramdas his blessings through those orbs, shook his head to say that he had blessed. Something like this he must have done. A thrill of inexpressible joy goes through the frame of Ramdas. His whole body quivering like a leaf in the breeze. O Ram, what a love is thine. Bidding farewell to the Mahatma, the Sadhu Ram when he returned to the goldsmith's residence. The impact we will see tomorrow.
Sri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram. Om Sri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram. Om Sri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram. Om Sri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai
Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram Om. Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram Om. Take up the text. We'll just go through some of the views expressed by our viewers. One point I wanted to ask, it seems Papa took books while leaving home, but never a mention of Japmala. Papa never used it. We don't see any reference of rosary or mala during Papa's period, sadhana period and after also. Mataji was insisting. Mataji was not insisting for mala, Mataji was insisting for the count. Naturally for the count we need mala. And the count is essential. Initially we have to fix up a target. Otherwise due to various preoccupations our priority may get diluted. We may leave the whole thing as, we will do it tomorrow. But suppose when we make a resolve that we will do it, mala will definitely help us to increase the number and finally to go beyond mala. So whenever devotees ask us, we tell them, because Papa was emphatic that mala distracts our attention. But then why Mataji insisted? So Mataji had a sankalpa 15,500 crore Nam Japetnya for Vishwa Shanti. When she made a sankalpa, it must be with some purpose. So God wanted. So in order to honor Mataji's words, all of us will keep some count for Mataji's account, for the sake of Vishwa Shanti. Rest of the chanting, though we must continue, need not be counted. Where we can exclusively apply our mind on the aspects like, he is making us to chant his name who is within us. All these thoughts. Asking alms by Papa who graduated from a premier institute, something unimaginable, no ego at all. That's absolutely right. All other things one may be able to reach, but to go and seek, alms, that is the height of self-effacement. Even yesterday we were even thinking about it. We may go as well without food, but to go and ask for food, ask for alms. So that means, even the Sadhuram said, you go and do that, immediately it was done. There is total self-effacement. And about Bhagavan, he himself laid down like a dead body. So many versions are there about Bhagavan's previous. Here also we find, the Papa had the initial background of Yoga Vasishta, where the impersonal aspect of God is highlighted. And slowly now he is led to a sage whose entire philosophy is based upon impersonal reality. See how he builds up. One more observation. Although Sri Aurobindo did not give Papa darshan, he was destined to meet Bhagavan himself. Yeah. Papa meditate on Ram and his lips chant Ram now. Yeah, that is going on. I lost Ram is present, and then who goes for alms? It's a very important question. We feel what would have happened is only an inference. As a sadhaka, we are also trying to dig, but we may not exactly know because Papa has not revealed that. In Srimad Bhagavad Gita, there is a shloka where he says, "Na kartrutvam na karmani lokasya srijati prabhu na karmavala samyogam svabhavastu pravartate." Here, neither agency nor action does the Lord create for the world, nor does He bring about the union. It is the nature that does all. So the sense of agency, you remember, Papa himself has said, it's a very deep subject, very deep. Unless we apply our mind very deeply, it will be difficult for us to understand. Papa elsewhere says, when the mind ceases to be, then you realize you are the Atman. Look without seeing, hear without listening, eat without tasting. This is the thing you have to attain. So when he goes, it is something like an automaton. If we ask the eye is there, no. Then who goes there? Automatically. Svabhavastu pravartate. He was asked to do, he does it. The agency of action is totally not there.
And one more thing, Swamiji, that Papa looked upon that Sadhu Ram as Ram prompts. So maybe because Ram is prompting him to.
No, here the question is, the I is lost in Ram. Then who goes for Rams? There is an entity going there, where the I is not there. That is the point.
Papa had told you as a dry leaf, where the wind blows, he moves.
So here the authentic svabhavastu pravartate, automated. That's why he says, eat without tasting. Eating is going on. Look without seeing. Hear without listening. Yajnavalkya said, so many things. Know without knowing. Think without thinking. How does it happen? It's a very serious question. And one has to keep on plunging deeper. Because it is purely, at this plane it is difficult to understand because we are full of the sense of agency. It is a stage where there is no sense of agency. Ram was testing if Papa gets disappointed or just leaves it. Okay, there. Now these are other questions. Now coming back. This 10th chapter is a very, very important chapter for a sadhana. Title is In the Caves. First, as usual, we will read now at the prompting of Ram, Ramdas, desiring to remain in solitude for some time, placed the matter before the Sadhu Ram. The Sadhu Ram was ever ready to fulfill his wishes. Losing no time, he took Ramdas up the mountain behind the great temple. Climbing high up, he showed him many caves. Of these, one small cave was selected for Ramdas, which he occupied the next day. In this cave, he lived for nearly a month in deep meditation of Ram. This was the first time he was taken by Ram into solitude for his bhajan. Now he felt most blissful sensations since he could hold undisturbed communion with Ram. He was actually a rolling in sea of indescribable happiness. To fix the mind at that fountain of bliss Ram means to experience pure joy. Once during the day when he was lost in the madness of Ram's meditation, he came out of the cave and found a man standing a little away from the mouth of the cave. Unconsciously he ran up to him and locked him up in a fast embrace. This action on the part of Ramdas thoroughly frightened the friend, who thought that it was a mad man who was behaving in this manner and so was afraid of harm from him. It was true, he was mad. Yes, he was mad of Ram. But it was a harmless madness which fact the visitor realized later. The irresistible attraction felt by him towards this friend was due to the perception of Ram in him. O Ram, thou art come, thou art come. With this thought, Ramdas had run up to him. At times he would feel driven to clasp in his hands the very trees and plants growing in the vicinity of the cave. Ram was attracting him from all directions. Oh, the mad and loving attraction of Ram. O Ram, thou art love, light and bliss. Thus passed his days in that cave. For food he would come down in the morning, going into the city, beg from door to door, and receive from the kind mothers of the place handfuls of rice in a small lota. When the lota was a little over half full, he would return to the cave. Collecting some dried twigs, he would light a fire, over which he would boil the rice in the same lota. Water was at hand. A small stream of pure crystal water was flowing down the hill just in front of the cave, and in this stream it was almost refreshing to take the daily bath. This boiled rice was taken to appease hunger, without salt or anything else, and only once a day. To share with him in this simple fare, a number of squirrels would visit the cave. Fearlessly at times they would eat from his hands. Their fellowship was also a source of great joy to Ramdas. Every day he would wander over the hills, amid the shrubs, trees and rocks, a careless, thoughtless child of Ram. It was altogether a simple and happy life that he led in that mountain retreat. The kind-hearted Ram would meet him every day. The kind-hearted Sadhu Ram would meet him every day, either up the hill or in the city when he came down from Bhiksha. A day came when he received the Ram's command to leave the place. Where to? Ram alone knew. Now it's a very important chapter in the sadhaka's life. When we look back in the chronological order, right from 1920 onwards, how Ram was building up a sense of frustration, sense of discontentment, intensity of pining for peace, all those things. He equipped him with whatever is necessary through the works of great masters, and then finally he made him to cry from the bottom of the heart, and he made him to hear his words. Immediately from belief it came to the trust. Then suddenly he felt a great relief. In order to sustain that feeling of relief, he started thinking about it, meditating about it. And that meditation continued even when though he was preoccupied with so many things, in between, he was filling up with this meditation on Ram. And when he knew the joy was building up, galloping as it were, such are the factors which were pulling him away, he was slowly leaving in the form of self-denial, in the form of dispassion, in the form of detachment. And then Ram arranged even an initiation through his father. Then he made him to go through the great works of Mahatmas, and then he made him to evaluate. The me and mine was reducing. The relationship and possessiveness, sense of possession was reducing. Maximum Ram was covering him, thought of Ram was covering him. When this stage, he made him to Papa to reach in Vittal Rao. He then revealed it to him intuitively that under given circumstances, it may not get stabilized. Where the reliance becomes total, if it has to become total, he has to be in a place where he is not known, and where he can try to have this Ram dimension or God dimension with all objects, persons, situations. So with that view, he motivated him to leave everything and then start on this saga of itinerant life. Ram must have been watching him, and every test when he passed, the time has come for him to consolidate all the earnings. So he finally took him to Ramana Bhagavan. Ramana Bhagavan is 5 years elder to Papa. That means Ramana Bhagavan must be 43 at that time. There are so many versions about Bhagavan. One way somebody has expressed, as a boy of 16 in 1896, he challenged death by a penetrating inquiry into the source of his being. Later hailed as Bhagavan Sri Ramana Maharshi, he revealed the direct path of practice of self-inquiry, and awakened mankind to the immense spiritual power of the holy Arunachala hill, the spiritual heart of the world. Ramana Maharshi was a 20th century South Indian sage who continues to radiate peace and self-awareness to the global community of spiritual seekers. You do not need to join any organization, adopt any belief system, or worship anyone or anything to experience this transmission of bliss and charity. Bhagavan simply points you towards your innermost self, the unchanging reality underlying all that exists. It is as if your life and the world is a movie. Bhagavan's practice of asking, who am I? It allows you to find real happiness through the realization you are the screen itself, not the projected movie. When Ramana Maharshi dropped the body on 14th April 1950, Papa wrote these words: a sun of rare spiritual brilliance has set. Sri Ramana Maharshi renounced his body on the on the night of 14th April 1950 at his ashram in Tiruvannamalai. His passing away has produced a most conspicuous void in our world today. Thousands of devotees in India and foreign countries are feeling the loss most powerfully. We can take consolation in the fact that since Sri Ramana, as the Supreme Spirit, is imperishable, he dwells always in the hearts of us all, for he was the very incarnation of the Divine. Sri Ramana was a savior of souls. The men and women who went to him for spiritual illumination returned with their hearts filled with divine peace and joy. His look was most dynamic. When he cast his gaze on any aspirant who stood or sat before him, it electrified the person and entirely turned the course of his life Godwards. Sometimes it shook the very foundation of that person's life and surcharged it with unutterable peace and ecstasy. Vast numbers from different countries and nationalities today look up to him as a great redeeming spiritual force that would bring about a regeneration in the life of humanity. Sri Ramana's philosophy is very simple. He asks you to find out, who am I? This self-inquiry directly turns your mind inward and makes you realize the truth that the individual I to which you are so perversely clinging has no existence. In other words, the self-inquiry enables you to completely dissolve the ego sense and grants you at once the consciousness of the reality. You now know that you are the Supreme Atman, the one, eternal, indivisible, all-pervading, blissful truth. Here Ramdas must say a few words about his personal contact with Sri Ramana. It was 27 years ago, that was in 1923, that Ramdas was drawn to him and had the brief contact of about 5 minutes with him. But these 5 minutes were for him pregnant with immense spiritual significance and possibility. When Sri Ramana intently gazed on Ramdas and the eyes of both met, Ramdas felt he was pouring into him his spiritual power and grace in abundance, so much so that Ramdas was thrilled as his divine light shone on his mind, heart and soul. Sri Ramana's eyes always radiated a splendor which was simply unique and irresistible, a splendor mingled with infinite tenderness, compassion and mercy. The few minutes that Ramdas spent in his holy company meant a momentous impetus in his spiritual career. With the above few words of loving tribute to Sri Ramana Maharshi, Ramdas offers his humble salutations to him. May his spirit ever illumine the hearts of all his devotees is the earnest prayer of his child. And we were told later on, Papa was making often references from Ramana's teachings, and we heard that Ramana Bhagavan was a regular reader of vision. Connection, the bond between Ananda Ashram and Ramana Ashram began from the 1923, even before the ashram was not set up. And by their grace, even now, it continues. Now coming back again. So that is how Ram built up the whole, can we say, infrastructure, no? The prerequisites for enabling Papa to consolidate all his earnings independently. A few quotations of Papa also we will, Ramana also we will save now, because that gives the complete portrayal of Bhagavan. God is always the first person, the I, ever standing before you. Because you give precedence to worldly things, God appears to have receded to the background. He stands before us, we don't recognize him, we only recognize the worldly things, so he takes a back seat. Think. God is always the first person, the I, ever standing before you. Because you give precedence to worldly things, God appears to have receded to the background. Appears to have. You cannot by any means escape the self. You want to see God in all, but not in yourself. If all is God, are you not included in that all? Normally, we go in search of God. A simple word, He makes us to turn round towards us. You cannot by any means escape the self. You want to see God in all, but not in yourself. If all is God, are you not included in that all? The Master is within, but as long as you think you are separate, or that you are the body, so long is the Master from without is necessary. The outward Guru, the outer Guru, and the inner Guru. When every day morning when we chant Brahmanandam, we are chanting to the inner Guru. But as long as we think he is separate, there is a need for an outer Guru. The Master is both within and without. To see God but not the self. To see God but not the self that sees is only to see a projection of the mind. God is seen by him who sees the self. Self means Atman, spirit. But one who has lost the ego and seen the self is none other than God. Being reality yourself, we seek to gain reality. The self you seek to know is verily yourself. Bliss is not added to your nature. It is merely revealed as your true and real natural state. The self you seek to know is verily yourself. Bliss is not added to your nature. It is merely revealed as your true and natural state. Bliss of the self is always with you. You will find it for yourself if you seek it earnestly. The body is within the self. Yet one imagines one is inside the inert body. Like the viewer who imagines the screen on which the picture is shown is within the picture. Consciousness is the screen on which all the pictures come and go. So like that there are so many inspiring words. He was telling, Papa was telling that it is purely a self-inquiry. Who am I? Papa's quotation also are all in line with that. When you open the book Glimpses of Divine Vision, which is a collection which has been compiled from the collection of letters replied by Papa to various devotees. It starts with this. What is religion? Try to enter into the mysterious origin of your and the world life. To know who you are in reality, who am I, is the real quest. To arrive at this truth, you have to, by a systematized process of thought and discipline, transcend all human limitations set by the body, mind and intellect, and then, embarking on the realm of the spirit, realize your immortal, changeless, blissful nature. This constitutes religion. So, Papa also echoes the same philosophy, everywhere we find. So now we know how Ram arranged everything. And the sequence is very, very now inspiring for us. And he finally brings him before Ramana Bhagavan, his own stature, his own form. Because now Papa can really absorb or take advantage of that form. One spark is necessary now. So that spark came from Ramana Bhagavan. 5 minutes, hardly 5 minutes. And what was the result? Ram arranged the darshan of Bhagavan to kindle in him the desire to evolve ways and means to get stabilized in the presence of Ram. Because elsewhere Papa says, what is the purpose of solitude? Sadhana in solitude is often very useful. Here you can have direct communion and talks with Him. In short, make God your all in all. Dedicate all your forces, both mental and physical, at His feet, become His entirely. For freedom from attachment, a most efficacious means is a recourse from time to time to solitude. The renunciation that is required of the sadhaka is the renunciation principally of the attachments existing in the mind. If you do not wish to be caught up in the whirlpools of worldly life, if you possess a firm determination to dedicate your life entirely to divine service, keep up the flame of vairagya, ever burning, by resorting regularly to solitude for meditation. Too much contact with the world will distract you from this lofty purpose of life. Don't allow yourself to be caught in conversation in which God thought is absent. Have recourse to your solitude now and then. Believe that you are in the hands of God. He will protect you in every way. Society of saints, solitude, engagement in selfless service, constant communion with the divine are essential methods by which one can keep his mind pure. So let the sadhaka know that self-purification alone can entitle him to the vision and experience of the great truth, God. So the stage is set. Papa is led. He had the darshan. The spark came. He decided to go. For the first time in his life, probably, he is going for solitude. People who are reading or hearing, this may not have this experience. So how however much we read, only to some extent we can infer certain things, we can form certain concepts. It will help, no doubt. But still the fullest import cannot be assimilated. Because solitude, when the response was positive, Ram must have felt that the time has arrived for consolidating the gains from the sadhana so far made by him, and hence prompted his devotee to go in for absolute solitude for a period of 1 month. Only by staying alone, that too in a cave, in an unknown place, the following aspects can be covered. What are they? Suppose you are in home, you are in the company of somebody takes care of your bodily requirements. No? Though your bodily requirement is minimum, still it has to be taken care of. No? Here, nobody will take care. So taking care of the minimum bodily requirement, and in his case, beg from door to door for rice, feeling contented when the lota is half, boiling it and taking it without even salt. It has to be done by him. So far, he was with family, or he was with friends, he was with Sadhu Ram. All these things have not been done by him. First time probably in his life. Then, adopting a simple and conducive place to rest. Even today, if we go to that Almera Guha, where Papa was supposed to spend that time, even today it is very difficult to get into it. It's a small entrance. So there, he was finding when body needs some rest, how he made it conducive. Then motivating to take to self-imposed regularity and discipline. Nobody will be there, So early morning we have to get up and do this, Ram Nam, going for meditation, going for bath, going for exercise. Nobody is there, everything you have to draw your own routine. So because he had reached a stage where this you is not there, Papa never felt any difficulty at all. But suppose you and I tomorrow do that, all these things we will plan, and nobody is there. Nobody to remind. Even the timing you don't know. Can you imagine? Even after getting up, even after doing so many things, you may not know the timing. And in our life, time plays an important role. Start thinking, the solitude means a simple word he has used. Then watching the antics of the mind, whether reliance on him is steady or wavering. Because the mind is playing. My mind has got its full field now. Curbing down-pulling tendencies. Normally, these are all the things when you stay alone. Preparing the ground for deep meditation of Ram. Initially, for the first two days, the body needs some adjustments, and finally, because he was purely guided by Ram, he knew it was exclusively for meditation of Ram. Ensuring undisturbed communion with Ram. That is the advantage. Nobody is there to tell us anything. And how will I know that I am fully secure in his hand? Only now. Because even in night there is no light, pitch dark. You are in a forest, you are in a cave, there is no door for the cave. start imagining. Feeling secure in Ram's hands. Giving him a glimpse of the, then ultimately when Papa was really making use of the wonderful opportunity provided by him, by Ram, and he passed the entire test, one by one. He gave the glimpse. Suddenly seeing, love, light and bliss. Love means absence of otherness, Otherness. There is no other for him. Light, the awareness. Bliss. That's all. So with that he ran and embraced. Everywhere the spark of God's presence. Here he had the twin advantage. One, his intense, deep study of Yoga Vasishtha must have really helped him. And Bhagavan's grace. Because the impersonal reality with which he started got stamped, authenticated, by Bhagavan's. Because he might have understood that right from 17th year, Bhagavan was sitting there. He ran from his home. And then came and sat, that's all. So when Papa saw him, he had been in that for 26 years. So it was a proof, testimony. God is sitting there in the form of impersonal reality. He got stabilized in that. No other outer sadhana he did. No other place he went. He did not went in search of a guru outside. He did not go to study Brahma Vidya. Later on we find, in all his works, authority on all Vedas. Papa was blessed with the knowledge of all these things. So that gave him the universal vision. Universal vision means from the individual plane to the universal level. Just imagine. So who am I in reality? When I do not constrain, contract, limit to the me and mine, what happens next could be only an expansion. And though all these were getting built up, when he had the physical darshan of the Guru, the spark came. And intensely when he followed it up through meditation, intense meditation, but going deeper and deeper and deeper into the core of his being, it came out as love, light and bliss. And then stretching the love circle to other creatures also. And not only that, he was not sitting there and doing it. He was enjoying the Ram's bounteous manifestation in the form of rocks, trees, shrubs, hills, etc. So the importance of this particular chapter gives so much importance for solitude. What are the advantages one gets, as a real spiritual aspirant gets with the solitude? In our own place, we may take to solitude, but everything is assured here. It is under a protected umbrella, that's all. The only thing is you are not meeting anybody. You are not talking to anybody. But here it is not like that. So the reliance on God, every moment, you have no choice but to rely on Him. And at the same time, we cannot say that this is a must. We saw the Maharshi there sitting there without going through any of these. So Ram is now placing before us by taking us with Papa on his itinerant yatra. These are all the things. Spirituality never limits spirituality to a particular line. There are so many advantages of solitude for a person who had immersed in a lot of activities previously. But if there are a very few privileged ones who are straight away taken, nowadays when you say, previously about 25, 30, 40 years back, after education, after graduation, you have to be in search for a job, Then the whole thing changed. All companies will come, and even in your fourth year, suppose you have got 5 years, there is a campus selection. Even before you complete, you are selected. Yeah. So in God's plans also, there are a few who doesn't have to go through all these things. See, Andamaima we have heard right from childhood. So they are all straight away campus selection. We don't belong to that. We have to do a lot. We console ourselves that they have done everything in their previous birth. So like that we also do everything in our present birth. We try to reduce the me and mine to the lowest, so that we will also entitle ourselves for the campus selection in our next birth. So here we find the real advantage of a solitary life. Because Papa was a family man, Papa was an employed person, Papa had undergone all vyavaharas, liabilities, commitments, responsibilities, duties, so many things. For such a person, whatever may be the background, it may be there, still there should be a time when he is exclusively to himself. Not merely a Parivrajaka Yatra. In Parivrajaka Yatra, either today somebody comes, in Papa's case we have found, one sadhuram goes, another sadhuram comes, so many people, you interact with so many people, so many experiences, so many situations you come across. But there should be a cessation of all these activities. You are exclusively to your capital S self. So that is why we can say to consolidate his earnings. Whatever, so we use that word because that is the only way by which we can convey this. Ram arranged the darshan of Bhagavan to kindle in him the desire to evolve, ways and means to get stabilized in the presence of Ram. When the response was positive, Ram must have felt that the time had arrived for consolidating the gains from the sadhana so far made by him. Hence prompted his devotee, Papa, to go in for absolute solitude for a period of 1 month, not 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 days. Only by staying alone, That too in a cave in an unknown place, the following aspects can be covered.
And that cave also, we cannot even lie down, isn't it?
We know at least for 1 or 2 hours, everybody needs rest. It's very difficult. It is not a big cave. And to stay there for nearly a month. Real test. And there also he makes a mention about the word meditation of Ram. Communion with Ram. These are the 2 words he has expressed there. We have to seriously think about it. What are we doing? We may not be able to go in for solitude. Our body, mind, intellect will not permit us. We will have an heart attack here. Suppose we are placed there. To think about such a life. Yesterday, Sri Krishnaji was telling about that rice without anything. Half a lot of rice, boiled rice, with nothing. So, suppose we are taken and put in a cave, what will happen?
How you must have spent the night?
We remember, of course, it's not correct to say, but still anyhow it has come, we will share. We were in a place almost like this for so many years. There was no electricity also. So somebody came from Madras. He was staying, we had only one kerosene lamp. Suddenly it was put, some wind, because of wind, it became extinguished. Total pitch dark. No human being anywhere near. So we asked him, suppose you are alone, what will happen? I will die.
Die of fear?
Fear.
Die of fear?
Huh? Because you get so many sounds only, no light, no human being.
Swami, how was your experience?
We'll discuss about papas. So it was, he say the purpose why he was there, no? I remember because he said, I will die. Similarly, suppose you are praying, just imagine all this with no background, with no support, with no mobile, with no contact, with how will you take for next meal? We have no idea. Will you go and beg and for this thing and do that? Now he felt most blissful sensation since he could hold undisturbed communion with Ram. And in this cave he lived for nearly a month in deep meditation of Ram. These 2 words, deep meditation, undisturbed communion. And because we cannot go or be denied, no, he shows Ravana Bhagavan there. Detachment, dispassion, commitment, all those things are necessary. All the three one you remember. Fixed, resolve,
Fixed resolve.
sustained
Faith.
faith, optimistic outlook. These were the three. If it is there, we will also be able to sit. Fixed resolve, no? That should be there. Not wavering. And sustained faith in the words of masters. And be always becoming optimistic in our outlook. If these three are there, we can. And for that also some schooling is necessary, some practice is necessary. It will not just come just because we hear all these things. So taking care of the minimum bodily requirement, he did it begging from door to door for rice. He did not ask for anything. Previously he was insisting for fruits. Now we don't know why he switched over. It could be that again he has to get in touch with the market, With money he has to go buy. Why? Whatever is offered is okay. And then when the rota is half, contentment. Oh, tomorrow will I get it? Today should I get it and keep it? There is nothing to keep there, And tomorrow he will, if he wants, he will give. And then comes here. There is no gas, there is no stove, there is no nothing. He boils it. It's once in a day. We are all enjoying Papa's, tapasya here today. But the transition from Vittal Rao to Sadhaka Ramdas and realized Ramdas, we should all know now, on 25th July when his Samadhi day comes, our heart should be full of gratitude towards him. For all of us, for the sake of all of us, he went through that, he recorded it. And then adopting a simple and conducive place. Whenever we happen to go to Tirunelveli next, kindly visit this. It is called Almara Guha.
Alamara Guhai. Alamara Guhai.
It's called Banyan Tree Cave. So there is a small entrance. We don't know now. We had visited 15 years back or 20 years back. And then self-imposed, when we are staying alone, we know that. Nobody will be there to guide us, no time conscious. From which time to which time we have no idea, excepting the movement of the sun. That is why he used to go for the noon for Bhiksha. And he takes bath there, he sits there. How he was communing, how he was meditating, he has not explained, but he has given it. The result he has given. He was in a blissful mood throughout. Preparing the ground for deep meditation, ensuring undisturbed communion with Ram, because he doesn't have to talk to anybody, he doesn't have to do anything for anybody outside. And most important, feeling fully secure in Ram's protection. And that led him, all these things enabled him to have a glimpse of the universal vision and stretching the love circle to others and enjoying Ram's bounteous manifestation in the form of rocks, trees. He was dancing, that word is also very... Every day he would wander over the hills, amidst the shrubs, trees, rocks, a careless, thoughtless child of Ram. It was altogether a simple and happy life that he led in the mountain retreat. So Papa passed the test, started rolling in a sea of indescribable happiness. To fix the mind on the fountain of bliss, Ram, means to experience pure joy. Ram blessed him with universal vision. Ram was attracting him from all directions. This word, Ram was attracting him from all directions. So there is no other. All creation, Jada and the Chetana, whatever it is there. A tree is there, a rock is there. Sentient, insentient. This is how one part, one stage has reached now in Papa's. You see the chronological order, step by step by step, from 1920 to 1923. It must have been January 1923 or February at best. Years time. In 3 years time he equipped him, he cleared him from all bindings. He put him on various tests to armor him, to insulate him. When he comes down to the level of the sense of individuality, he should become impervious to all the onslaughts of the normal one. He must have tremendous endurance power. He must have a strong and determined mind intellect. So all those things Ram equipped, made him to pass so many tests, finally led him and made him to stand before Ramana Bhagavan. Then the spark came, he felt, and then it triggered, prompted him to go for a month-long solitude. Till that moment when Sadhu Ram was there, now nobody is there. Nobody means nobody, literally nobody, excepting Ram, which fills up everybody, everything that we call as everybody. And then the glimpse of the divine vision, the universal vision. And intuitively he felt one day, yes, we can go. This is a chapter which we should read, ponder, reflect. Not that we can imitate or do anything what Papa did. But the essence of it or the theme of it can be internalized. And to some extent we will be able to live up to it. When we pray from the bottom of the heart, you have not made us to embrace this type of life. You have put us in a different frame of life. And at the same time you make us to hear all these things. Why are you making us to hear? When you know that our equipment is not yet ready, when we ask like this, there will be a subtle message coming to us. something like this, that you need not go by the grosser levels, but go by the subtle levels. That means reducing our wants, reducing our dependence upon some others, more and more communion with Him, more and more meditation of Him, trying to stretch our love circle, adapting to every circumstances, accepting subservience to the Almighty Lord through any form. Like that, He may give us some clues. So the grosser level, we may not be able to. Subtler level, we might be able to. So let us all pray to the indwelling and all-pervading reality who is taking us this journey with Papa in quest of God, to touch and kindle in us what should be our ultimate aim or goal in our life. Let us not dilute it, whatever may be the outer circumstances, whatever may be our outer limitations. Let us not dilute the ideal. So let the prayer wells up from our mind on these lines. Hari Om.